Good day, everyone. First of all, I want to say many thanks to Zara, who invited me to talk to you today about my research in South Africa. And thank you to everyone for joining me today. My name is Tanya van der Ven. I am the research manager of Mogalakwena Research Centre. And today I will talk to you first about my PhD research on Zazu, or the southern yellow-billed hornbill, and then I will talk to you about the research that we're doing with the research center and the giraffe studies. Aka Melman. Good. So Zara and we met when she came to South Africa in 2019 to study the social structure of giraffe nursery groups at the Mogalakwena Research Centre. So that's a while back already. So I grew up in the Netherlands, and I have always had a passion for wildlife and nature. And just like Zara, I went to South Africa to do an internship for my undergraduate course in animal science. Here I studied the vigilance behavior of cheetahs. And on the photo on the left, you can see myself with my dad cuddling some cheetahs. It was an amazing experience. So loving it so much, I finished my studies in the Netherlands, and then I moved to South Africa in 2008 to continue my postgraduate career. I first did my master's studies at the Nelson Mandela University, and then my PhD study at the University of Cape Town. And then after that, I got a position as research manager of the Mogalakwena Research Centre. But during the seminar today, I would like to talk to you about my PhD research and the research that we are currently undertaking at the Research Centre. So the photo on the right, you can see myself as well as the legendary Sir David Attenborough, who I got to meet while I was studying at the Nelson Mandela University. I feel very lucky to have met such an extraordinary man who's a true example for every naturalist. So with this in mind, let's continue the talk. So since coming to South Africa, my true interest developed with the behavioral and physiological capacities of species to persist while facing the challenges of climate change. The research project that I worked on for my PhD couldn't have been any better, as I got to work and live in the Kalahari for 4 years, investigating the effects of climate change on the reproductive success of Zazu, aka the southern yellow-billed hornbill, this awesome animal here. At the study site in the Kalahari, these birds were habituated, which means that I could come within close proximity of these birds and record their behavior. Also at the study site, these birds are ringed. So as you can see, this bird has 3 colorings on his feet. And for every individual, the colorings have a unique combination. And this allowed me to identify every individual separately. So being in the Kalahari, I spend my days walking in the bush, looking for these hornbills. And in the heat of the day, I struggled the most, as these hornbills would be hiding in the shade of a tree, like this guy here. So in order to shelter from the heat, these guys would sit in the most impossible places, and I would search for 2 hours at times to just find my study individual for that day. In the Kalahari, it gets really hot in the afternoon, and summer temperatures can actually go up to 45 degrees. So I would observe these birds in the morning session, afternoon session, and evening session. But first, let me tell you about this unique breeding system of these hornbills. So hornbills are cavity breeders. In the wild, they would be finding natural sites in trees. So that would be cavities that were hollowed out by other species. But at the study site, we put up these nest boxes, and the birds were very happy to be breeding in these nest boxes as well. What happens is that when she's ready, the female will go inside the nest cavity. She will seal off this hole, as you can see there. She will just leave this tiny little split, and this is for her to poop to the outside, and for the male to bring food items from the outside. This seal is a protective mechanism against predators. So inside the nest box, the female is totally safe from any predators, no snakes, no mongooses. She and her chicks are all safe there. So she will first lay her eggs, she will incubate these eggs, then she will look after these little chicks. Here in the photo, you can see chicks that are 10 days old, I would guess. So tiny chicks that definitely need looking after. Up until these chicks are old enough, she will stay with them. And as soon as they, from the inside, can reach this hole and receive the food from the provisioning male, then she will also come out and assist the male in finding food for the chicks. But up until this point, which is about 30-day period, the male is solely responsible for finding food for the female and the chicks inside the nest. So it's quite a big job that he has, looking after his entire family, feeding everyone, including himself. There he is. So temperatures in the Kalahari have increased in the last decades. I've got this very large data set that I obtained from a nearby weather station, and it goes as far back as the 1960s. As you can see, it's very stable up until 1996, and this is when daily maximum temperatures have been going up. Let me get my pointer. Yes, so I'm not sure how visible these lines are for you guys, but in between these lines, so this bit is when my study took place. So it's very hot days there. So knowing that this male hornbill is responsible for feeding his entire family, you can imagine that on these very hot days, this male is struggling to find enough food to keep everybody inside the nest happy. Animals have a variety of methods which help them to keep cool when temperatures rise. So how can they keep cool? There are some physiological methods, for example, sweating. This is something that we as people do as well on the skin. And then panting, like dogs pant, birds pant as well. And then in addition, birds will also spread their wings. You might have seen on hot days, birds will sit with their wings spread, and this allows the wind to go past this unfeathered skin that is under their wings, so that promotes heat loss. Then there also do some behavioral methods, which I'm sure you are familiar with, and we also do these things. On the photo here at the bottom, you could see a group of meerkats in the heat of the summer in Kalahari as well, and they found a very good spot to lay in the shades and to be inactive as well, because when you lower your activity, it also lowers your metabolic heat production. So those are two behavioral mechanisms that animals can use to reduce heat load on their bodies. So why did we expect these hornbills to be struggling and to be vulnerable to increases in air temperature? So in order to investigate this, I was looking at what is currently happening on these very hot days. So what can we expect? So like I said, panting. So panting is a method to lose heat via evaporative water loss. So panting, you're also losing water, and that will keep your body cool. So we sweat, birds pant, but now there's a problem because hornbills, they don't drink. So the only way for them to replenish this water that is lost via panting, they need to obtain all the water from the prey items that they find. So it's very hot in the Kalahari. Our male bird is very hot as well. But now the chicks and the female inside the nest, they are hungry. And not just hungry, but they need to obtain this water from the food items in order for them also to keep cool within that nest box. but then this guy is also hot. So at this moment in time, on this hot day, when both of them are hot, actually what the male wants to do is just sit in the shade and lower his activity. But at the same time, now he needs to go and find food for his family, and he needs to find food for himself to keep cool. So this is where the idea came from. How do these birds solve this problem? Is there a problem? Is there a problem, and do they know how to deal with it? So in order to look at that, I have been following the male birds around in this Kalahari site, and I have been looking at their behavior specifically. So here I want to show you some of the results that I have been finding. So while the males were foraging, I would follow them around and I would record the number of prey items that they caught. And I also would record whether they were whether they were foraging on the ground, or whether they were foraging in the tree, or whether they were foraging in the shade or in the sun. Then as well, with every food item that they did find, I would record whether he would eat it himself or whether he would fly to the nest box and deliver it to his family. Unfortunately, I found that hornbills were less successful in finding food when they were in the shelter of a tree. So as you can see on the graph here on the left, so we've got on the y-axis the prey captures per minute foraging, and then we've got here on the x-axis the different microsites, which were 4 different categories. The one is the bird sitting off the ground, so in a tree, in the shade. The other one is sitting on the ground, but in the shade. The third one is off the ground in a tree, but exposed to the sun. And then the fourth category is foraging on the ground in the sun. And as we can see, if these birds are foraging on the ground, they are much more successful in finding and capturing prey items. So unfortunately, as these birds are sitting in the heat of the day, sitting in the tree, there's not much, there's only little food items they can find. So after I found this, then I looked at, so what proportion of food is he now bringing to the nests, and how is this affected by daily temperatures? So on this next graph here, I'm looking at daily provisioning rates, so how many food items are brought to the nest in one day, as a function of the daily maximum temperature. And as you can see, the number of provisioned items to the nest reduces as air temperature goes up. So there's less food going to the nest as the temperatures go up. So now we need to see what is the impact of this. So in order to look at that, every sunrise and sunset, I would go to all these nest boxes with chicks. And because they are breeding in nest boxes, I can now open up the lid. I can take all the chicks out and put them on the scale, like this little chap here. So yeah, they're very easy birds to work with. When they get older, they get a bit more difficult, but if they do, then I would put them in a little bag so that they would stay calm and that they wouldn't need to see any of the surroundings. But as long as they were young like this one, they would happily sit on the scale twice a day. With this data, I could then calculate how much weight would a chick gain in one day. And if I plotted this, so that is the percentage body mass change in a day, when I plot this as a function of maximum temperature in a day, I could see that on these hotter the days, the less weight a chick would gain in that day. So that's not very good. So what does this mean for the chicks? In order to look at this result now and what does it mean for the persistence of this hornbill population, I then went on to look at, okay, so what is the temperature, the mean maximum temperature that chicks experience during the time that they are in the nest. So this is what we've got here on the x-axis. And then on the y-axis, we've got 0, meaning all the birds that died in the nest. and one being all the birds that survived and that successfully fledged from the nest. And as you can see, they found that the probability of successfully fledging fell below 50% when the chick had experienced a mean temperature of over 35 degrees while it was in the nest. 35 degrees is not that hot. And temperatures are getting hotter. So this is a very not a good result for the hornbills, unfortunately. So the results of my PhD research show that the impact of high temperatures to hornbill breeding are quite high. So then what do we predict for the future of the hornbills? Well, we see that these high temperatures do impact chick growth. So what we can do as a conservation strategy, we can provide nest boxes, and in places where there's already nest boxes, we can improve these, we can insulate them, so to hopefully have a little bit of a less heat exposure on these little chicks. Then another thing is that my study found place in the Kalahari. Actually, that study site of mine is here. So northern South Africa, still Kalahari. So here in red, you've got Kalahari. But now, obviously, that is only one sample from one population. Yes, the rest of the Kalahari also gets hot, but if we look at the distribution of the southern yellow-billed hornbill, here another map that I've overlaid, you can see that they also inhabit these cooler regions here in the east, and also a little bit here in the west. So actually, yes, now they might not be doing too well here, but here they should be still doing fine. So we should aim at conserving the populations residing in the cooler parts of the distribution. All right. So moving on from my PhD research to my role as a research manager at the Mogalakwena Research Centre. I started this position in August 2018, and the research center is located in a private game reserve, and it gives us access to study all the animals and all the plants in the reserve. So the research center, we offer research projects and facilities for students and interns who have an interest in ecology as well as anthropology. And then our facilities include supervision. So during the entire project of our students, we provide them supervision. In this building here, which we call the Eco Center, we have a library, we have a museum, we have a laboratory, Wi-Fi, as well as a computer with the long-term data sets of what previous students already have been collecting. So if students come, they usually come for 3 to 6 months at a time. So that's not a very long period to collect your own data, but with these long-term data sets, you can extend your data set and still have a very good results section of your project. So luckily, I don't run the research center by myself. I would like to introduce you to here on my left, but very right in the photo. This is Dr. Elby Kutsia. She is the director of the research center. And then here we have Riki and Portia, who are the research assistants. And Salome works in the bush camp. So since 2006, the research center has been supervising students during anything up from 2 weeks up to a year, but mostly students come for 3 to 6 months at a time for their internships. Our students also come from all over the world, and on average, we've got a group of 10 students staying in the bush camp. So here you can see both Portia and Riki going into the field with students. Here they're doing small mammal trapping. Here they're looking at dung beetles. They're collecting frogs. Here they're looking at tracks in the sand. So there's a whole variety of things that can be done in a reserve. So we've got a bush camp. This is where students can stay when they're staying with us. So here top right, you can see a typical room. You're sharing a room. And then this here on the bottom, that is our open kitchen. We find that students usually cook together. Every week we take them for a food shopping trip, so then they can buy in bulk, save it up for the week. Every Saturday night we have a braai. So you can see on the top right, we're actually making a potjie here. And braai would be just having the meat on the fire, which is on the coals, the hot coals, which is the South African way of barbecuing. And then we often organize group activities such as volleyball. We hike up the mountain. We have done here with the whole group. We go butterfly identification, frog identification, or we also offer trips nearby. For example, to the park Mapungubwe, and also the Kruger National Park is not too far from us. So we provide these facilities for students. Then some of our long-term research projects at the research center include the competition of nest cavities. We have 18 nest boxes up in our reserve, and on a monthly basis, we check which species are competing for these cavities. And here you can see a little mongoose with her babies, then bush babies, they'll stay in the nest boxes during the day. Then the squirrels, they will stay in the nest boxes during the night. But also at the moment, currently, South Africa is going into summer, and then hornbills have started breeding here. So for my PhD research, I looked at the southern yellow-billed hornbill, and here on this image, you can see the southern red-billed hornbill. We also have the yellow-billed hornbill in this reserve and the grey hornbill. So at the moment, we are monitoring all three species, which is quite nice. Very exciting results there as well. Then we are also interested, that jumped over. We are interested in animal behavior. And for this, we habituated this troop of vervet monkeys. They stay close to the bush camp as well. So students can follow these monkeys around. They can look at the vigilance behavior or, for example, social behavior of these monkeys. They are very fascinating to watch and to observe and record behavior. We also have hides at the waterholes. So that would be your image sitting at a hide in a waterhole. You can have all these animals coming to visit to drink. Then we are also doing the carnivore monitoring. So we've got a variety of carnivores at the reserve, and here on this slide I only showed to you the biggest ones. So we've got the leopard here, the brown hyena, and the African civet. So what we can do is, this is a beautiful track of leopards. So students will go out early morning and they will look at all the tracks and see what animals have been moving around that night. Then we also have the camera traps, like being set up here. So those species that we never see them anyway, but they are active during the night. So at least with these cameras, we can capture the movements. And then we are looking at how these species compete for space and prey items. Then jump twice again. Good. So besides animal studies, we also work closely together with the local community and the local school here in Simpson. And at the local school, we create awareness about the importance of sustainability and looking after the environment. So it's this group of children, and especially Portia, our research assistant, she is an eco-mentor of children in the wilderness. You can Google that. It's a very good organization, and they are promoting the education of these children and that they understand how important environment is. In this photo, you can see that we invited the group to the eco center, and for some of them it is using a microscope for the first time. So it's very important that we provide them with these exposure to science, to research, but we also take them to the reserve, show them the animals, and they enjoy it a lot. It's great. Also in collaboration with the Craft Art Development Foundation and under the supervision of Dr. Albi Coutier, the research aims to document the culture of the local people using embroidery. So in this image here, you can see two ladies from the local village busy embroidering the culture onto a piece of cloth. So this is a way to document culture. So those are also projects that can be done at the research center. Then at last we have arrived at Melman and at the giraffe studies that we do at Mogalakwena. So myself having an interest in behavioral adaptations of animals to the effects of climate change, I started this study in 2018. So it was first proposed by Kunch and Mel in 1990 that giraffes will orientate their face towards the sun when it gets hot. And this is because if they are facing the sun, this huge neck will then cast a shadow on the rest of their body. And this is an additional behavioral way of keeping themselves cool, keeping their body temperatures constant. So at Mogalakwena, our giraffes are habituated and they can be followed on foot, just like you can see in this image here. Beautiful large giraffe. And students go out to collect behavioral data. They then record the orientation of the giraffe towards the sun. And this graph shows some of our preliminary results. So on the y-axis here, we've got the time that they spent within an observation facing to the sun. And then on the x-axis here, we've got temperature. So yes, momentarily there is an increasing trend, but it's not yet significant, which means that we still need to collect quite a bit of data on this study. Also over seasons, because you can see it doesn't go very high here, the temperature. So we need from the very cool days up until the very hot days until we get the full story, until we can get the full story right here. So yes, long-term study must be conducted over multiple seasons. Then another giraffe study that we started this year is recording or measuring the coat color of the giraffes. So this project was started by a student beginning of this year, but then he had to go home in March due to the corona. Luckily for him, he had been taking a lot of images from our giraffes and he could analyze the results from home. So we are investigating which factors affect coat color in giraffes. And as we can see from Melman, yes, we actually have a giraffe that is called Melman. So here, Melman in 2013 is quite a bit lighter as Melman nowadays. Look at him, he's all dark. So it's a very impressive dark giraffe, this Melman. But besides age, so aging coat gets darker, also we find that males are quite a bit darker than females. Males also tend to get darker as they become more dominant. And then we also predict that there may be a genetic influence of them being either darker or lighter. So these are all things we still need to test. And I'm very excited about the new giraffe studies that look at the capacity of animals to adjust their behavior to keep cool on very hot days. And I'm also interested in extending these questions, looking at other species, for example, vervet monkeys. They're also very good study objects, as well as the antelopes, maybe, but also even baobab trees. So there is also a paper saying that on very hot days, baobab trees lose a lot of moisture. So I'm interested to repeat this study and see if the same is evident at the Mogalakwena River Reserve. So there's a need to identify the species that are vulnerable. Yes, there's a need to identify the species that are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and the long-term monitoring of species can help the development of conservation strategies. That went too soon. There you go. So if any one of you is still looking for an internship for next year, I invite you to visit our website, www.researchlimpopo.com. And on this website, you can find more information on how you can join any of our projects at Mogalakwena. And we would very much like you to join our international team of young researchers. So you never know, maybe we will see you in the nearby future. I thank you all very much for your attention. And I would like to know if there's any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Thanks.